Yeah.
They're two. Right, I think I will just introduce you.
This is how we organize it.
Hello, everybody. Everybody in the room is getting settled. It's good to see you here. Thanks, folks online, for joining us as well. And I would like to welcome tonight a special guest speaker. We're really lucky to have Attea with us tonight. And Anne is one of the folks who works in the Center for Spirituality and Social Justice at St. Kate's. And previous to that has had a long career working with Latino and Hispanic ministry in different churches throughout the diocese, as well as all around the world. And well,
Yeah.
internationally.
Internationally, right.
Okay. So, Anne, thank you for coming tonight. And I know you'll have much more to say about your journey, and we're really lucky that you're here. So let's give Anne a welcome.
And thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation to.
Can I make my announcement?
Oh, absolutely.
I brought Our Lady of Guadalupe cards that and they're in boxes that were ready to fold. So if you haven't printed herself, there they are. So they're on the table and the price is there. If you want to buy some, give me the money. Thank you. Thanks. You're welcome.
All right, so like I said, thank you for having me join you tonight. In preparation for my portion of this program, I went back and was reading some of the things that you all have been reading. And wow, what a wealth of information, a wealth of wisdom, and a call to solidarity for both the earth and for folks working at the margins. So I'm sorry to have missed all of the sessions that you've already been going through. But I'm really grateful and honored to be with you tonight and to share a little bit of my journey and relate it to Guadalupe. So I was thinking about the blurb that was in your syllabus that talks about thinking about a dynamic, loving God who sustains a self-creating universe and calls us to participate in creating a community of love among humankind and kin and moving beyond the static patriarchal worldview. Right? So I thought, okay, well, we can break that down a little bit and would like to look at that in the light of the Guadalupe story and through popular religiosity more in general, and then take a look at what I think this might mean for today and through my accompaniment with the local Latino community. So I, first of all, want to commend our conversation tonight to Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe. And wanted to share with you, this is the Guadalupe that hangs in my house. And if you know Brother Mickey McGrath and his work, he is the artist of this. And I'm particularly drawn to this version because of all the colors. I'm a woman of color. I just love it to pop out of the page a little bit.
Here, Anne, can you show it to this?
Oh, yes. But you can see there's a little bit of a glare, but in any event, so we will have her join us here tonight as we talk about Guadalupe. So in the slides here, there's a few slides we're going to look at. The first one is going to be of the mural that Amira Orozco talks about in the book in the very beginning. So actually the next one.
Let me get it
Sorry.
presented. Sorry.
No worries at all.
Okay. There we go.
So this is the mural that she talks about in the book with the large picture of the Virgin, and then the pixels are a little off, but these are the flowers here in Juan Diego, and then the sky, but you can see it takes up like 1.5 of the building. And then I found this other picture from Pilsen as well, and just thought it was kind of interesting for where it's positioned with that gate in front of it, right? Especially as we talk about folks who are feeling marginalized. But again, she kind of just pops out of the wall there, and then the top, that's one of usually an Aztec figurine, that's bringing together the ancient past of the people Guadalupe, who is the bridge person. And then if you'll notice over here, you've got mother and child. So mother and child to bring it into the contemporary world. Okay. So something else that's fascinating about Guadalupe that I actually learned in a video that we're going to see is that it was Pope Pius XII who proclaimed her as patroness of the Americas. Now, I had first heard about that back in the late 1990s, in fact, when Pope John Paul II went to Mexico. And what he was doing was reiterating that she was the patroness of the Americas when he visited Mexico. So she's not just special to folks in Mexico. She's not just special to folks in Central America, but she is actually the patroness of North, Central, and South America. And Pope John Paul said that actually he was asking that her feast day on December 12th be an obligatory memorial for all of the Americas. So again, I think when we're talking about, are we North Americans, Central Americans, South Americans? We're all Americans. And so she is meant to be this figure to bring and bridge us together. The other point that is very, very interesting, and this is from Virgil Elizondo, and it comes out of his book Guadalupe, which I'm going to refer to quite a bit tonight. But he says, I dare to say that I do not know of any other event since Pentecost that has had such a revolutionary, profound, lasting, far-reaching, healing, and liberating impact on Christianity. That's a pretty bold statement, right? So to just think about what her importance has been for the people of Mexico. And I went to Mexico in my early 20s to study Spanish. I had not even really heard of Our Lady of Guadalupe, right? So I got to thinking, especially when I was reading that, about the catechism that I received was white Western European theology. There had no variety into it, right? And even thinking in my theology studies as an undergrad and studying liberation theology, but we were really looking at Gustavo Gutierrez and the Deep South, and Guadalupe just didn't make an impression for me at all until I actually went down to the country. So Amiro Orozco gives us the basic Guadalupe story in about a paragraph and a half in the book, right? So I thought it might be kind of interesting to look at a short 5-minute video. And while you're looking at this, just to think to yourself, what grabs your attention? What arouses your curiosity about what you see in the video? So Andrew's gonna pull that up for us and take a look.
Affectionately known in Spanish as La Morenita because of her mestizo complexion. For nearly 500 years, Our Lady of Guadalupe has been the icon and mother of Mexico and Latin America. From December 9th to 12th, 1531, on the hill of Tepeyac near Mexico City, the Blessed Mother appeared to a native Aztec, Juan Diego, and asked him to build a church there at that location. She spoke to him in his own Nahuatl language and presented herself, saying, I am the perfect and ever-virgin Holy Mary, Mother of the God of Truth, through whom everything lives. The bishop didn't believe Juan Diego's story. Then on December 12th, the last day of the apparition, Our Lady asked Juan Diego to collect roses as a sign for the bishop. In the middle of winter, Juan Diego filled his cloak, his tilma, with Castilian roses. When he opened the tilma before the bishop, a miracle took place. The image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, just as Juan Diego had seen her, appeared on the cloth. The bishop believed. The image was put on display for the veneration of the faithful. A chapel was built on the place of the apparitions, which is today a large shrine, the most visited in the world. Right from the start, the image attracted much attention. Scientific studies have only made its mystery more profound. The image on the tilma isn't painted by human hands. Not only are there no signs of any pigment on the fibers of the cloth, but the image was imprinted at the same time and remains intact after 500 years. The tilma maintains a constant temperature between 98 and 98.6 degrees, the normal temperature of a living person. The proportions of the body of Our Lady are those of a woman who is going to give birth within several days. Indeed, the date of the apparition was shortly before Christmas. The tilma seems indestructible. In 1785, the image emerged intact despite an accidental spill of a highly corrosive cleaning solvent. In 1921, it survived a bomb attack.
Come on, friend.
Even more surprising is the mystery of its eyes. In its pupils can be seen 13 human profiles, and a specific scene is visible, Juan Diego showing the roses to the bishop. What Our Lady saw with her own eyes has remained forever imprinted there. Not only that, the images respect the laws of physics as reflected in the eyes of a living person, not only alive at the time, but alive even today. There are other various striking details. The Blessed Mother's hair is loose, an Aztec symbol of virginity. The belt on the upper part of her abdomen shows she's pregnant. The 46 stars on her robe are an exact representation of the constellations in the sky on December 12, 1531. The 4-petaled flower on her womb reveals the presence of the divine in her womb. The apparitions of Our Lady of Guadalupe have been recognized by the Church. In 1946, Pope Pius XII proclaimed Our Lady of Guadalupe the patroness of the Americas. Juan Diego was canonized in 2001.
Oh my gosh.
So honey aside, take a few minutes at your table to just talk about what were some things that grabbed your attention and what aroused your curiosity.
Before we do that, we've got a question online. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is this, hi, my name is Christy, and I'd like to know, is this on a video? Because I'd like to share it with my husband. Is there easy
it's
access to this somewhere?
Yes, it can be sent to you by email.
Okay.
And just to say, there are a zillion trillion, no, maybe not a zillion trillion, maybe just a trillion. There are many videos, and some are much longer that have the full telling of the whole story, and then others that focus more on kind of those scientific things you saw. So if you just Google Our Lady of Guadalupe, you'll find many resources.
So how will we find this one?
We can email it to you.
How long would you like our conversation to go?
Just 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Yeah,
Okay.
and you can, or you took it at that, yeah. Or 6 or 8, you know.
You just get a, I saw, oh, I didn't know. No, I'm the other side. It's fine. That's fine. in the Long Gospel Weeklies.
Okay, here they come.
I think it's her second.
Okay, we've got our Zoom, the Zoom books back as well. So does anybody want to share in the large group? Just something that was particularly striking or interesting or curious for you? And again,
I think our group said.
Oh, is it okay if we use a microphone? I'm sorry. I would run up, but I'm,
The details about her eyes and about the stars and.
not on, sorry.
The details of her eyes, her pregnancy, the stars in her mantle, all of those things were not really known, or, that was kind of, that was impressive. The cosmology of it, that it kind of fits into a bigger picture.
So you have the table, Kathy.
And Anne was just there a week ago. Oh, and I was,
Oh, my
the
goodness.
other thing is, I was there 1 week ago. at Guadalupe.
Say it again.
Oh, I was at Our Lady of Guadalupe 1 week ago, and I brought for Anne, in Spanish, is the October 2025 Guadalupano Bulletin from the Archdiocese of Mexico. That's just the magazine. I didn't know it was a magazine.
Well, we named all of those things that you just named too, about the scientific and especially the eyes and all of that. But the other thing is that she is with the poorest person. And he even tried to beg off from that when the bishop wouldn't listen. You should get somebody else, No, little one, I want you. And so the thing that stood out for me personally was more people visit that than any other place in the world.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yes.
I grew up in Texas and we had a Spanish mission in our town that had Our Lady of Guadalupe picture. And my family went there a lot. And I've been to the shrine in Mexico and all. I just have always had a felt love for her. There was something about the story that made a big difference for me, my whole family. So I love them. I didn't know all those details about them till now.
Thank you.
One thing that I'm impressed by is how much she's a part of the culture, the people's lives. My grandkids go to school in Ventura, California, and they have this art sale or this craft sale that they've made in classes. And first of all, it's a very recognizable image because I think we were at a basketball game beforehand and there were some kids across the room and I thought, oh, they're selling. I could tell that this bag had an image of Guadalupe printed on it. And I said, oh, I want one of those. And I went over and they were selling them to little middle school kids, which is really interesting. I mean, I love it, and then I wanted to share with you people, there's I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Capuchin Art Trust Museum in Shoreview. They have glasswork, it's free, you have to make appointments, but currently their exhibit, which was over 2 weeks ago, is by the Torres brothers, who are glass workers. They work together, and I was there Friday, and there are only 37 images, but there are so many details in them that I couldn't see it all. But I turned around and from across the room, it had the aura and I knew it was Guadalupe. So, so it's everywhere in the lives of the people.
would anyone online like to share? If so, just unmute and speak.
Do you want me to keep it over there?
No, I don't know.
The next, we'll bring it out again in a little bit. Okay, so thank you. Thank you to everyone who shared. And Kathy, your comment was a perfect segue into the next part here, because for those who don't know, the deeper part of the story is that, you know, the 1492. What do we know about 1492? Yeah. So we had some visitors, right, to the quote unquote New World. And so what we see, Guadalupe appears about 45 years after the Spanish have come, and they basically pillaged the land and they've oppressed the people. They've destroyed everything. They've destroyed the people's way of life. They've destroyed their temples. They've destroyed their tribes, their everything, and they've discredited everything that they've been doing. So you've got this cosmology of the Europeans whose mentality is to be bold and go forth, and the true and good and beautiful human being is the person who wants to go out and get what they want, basically, right? At least with the males in the way of the patriarchal society for that. And then you come and you meet this indigenous populations whose whole cosmic worldview is around harmony and relationship and interconnectedness with yourself, with others, with the earth, with the land. And so you can imagine they've been decimated. They've been wiped out, right? And so you've got logic and reason and argumentation coming into contact with people who are looking at omens, and they're looking at dreams, and they're looking at the mystical sense of life and what it means. And so Guadalupe comes, right? And she looks like the indigenous people. And she is robed in this cloth that's the color of royalty for the indigenous people, right? And she's bathed in the stars, and she's standing in front of the sun, and the sun was the Aztec god, right? But she's in front of the sun. She's not trampling on the sun, but she's covering it, and the rays are emanating from her. So there's all of this symbology in here to say, wow, wait a minute. But when Juan Diego first hears this music, this bird song, which again, with being in tune to the nature, bird song, flowers, all of this was a way of the divine communicating with people, right? And he says, you know, Juan Diego stopped and said to himself, by chance, do I deserve this? Am I worthy of what I'm hearing? Maybe I'm dreaming. Maybe I only see this in my dreams. Where am I? Maybe I'm in the land of my ancestors, or of the elders of my grandparents, the land of the flower in the earth of our flesh, maybe over there inside of heaven. Like he is like, I don't know where this is coming from, but this is not part of what I have been living and what my people have been living for the last 45 years. So right in that, it's very different, and it has a very cosmopolitan or cosmological edge to it, right? And so that's when we come, so a dynamic, loving God. Where are we going to find a dynamic, loving God in the midst of all of this violence and this destruction? And to say the violence and destruction really was on both sides, right? Here you've got these conquerors who have come and are killing and raping and pillaging and no sense of harmony. But igual, the Spanish are saying, well, who are these people who are doing human sacrifices on these temples? Look at all of these people that are dying. This can't be civilization, right? So again, really, really that clash of everything. So again, where do we find the loving God? And so Juan Diego begins to think about this, like what does this mean, right? And then if we go on into the story, you start getting some of the quote unquote miracles. So Juan Diego is on his way to church, walking miles and miles and miles when he hears all of this, the bird song and the message to him, right? And Guadalupe says to him, Juan, dignified Juan Diego, el digno, right? The dignified one. And of course he's like, well, me, you know? And but he has the conversation, and again, she says, go to the bishop and tell him I want you to build a temple here, right? And she wants a temple that is going to be for everyone, right? To bring peace and harmony back to the earth. And he goes, but do you think he's successful? No, right? So he comes back and he says to her, let me get to the right paragraph here. Sorry about that. Well, you know what? I jumped ahead of myself, so I'm going to back up for a minute because I wanted to get back into the nature scene here. And this is what it says. And what I'm reading from is the Naukan Hoawa, which is what Orozco is referring to, which is this great piece of poetry. And so Elisandro said, I looked for the best Spanish translation, and then we translated into English. So this is what we're hearing. This is the actual text. And he says, and the rocks and the cliffs where she was standing, upon receiving the rays like arrows of light, appeared like precious emeralds, appeared like jewels. The earth glowed with the splendors of the rainbow. The mesquites, the cacti, and the weeds that were all around looked like feathers of the quetzal. And the stems looked like turquoise. The branches, the foliage, and even the thorns sparkled like gold. Okay? So again, this rich imagery of the natural world and what that means. And then in contrast, he comes back after hearing about what she wants him to do, right? And he feels like he's failed because the bishop hasn't received him. And what does he say? You need to send a nobleman, a well-known person who's respected and esteemed, to come by and take your message and your words so that he may be the lead. Because in reality, I'm one of those campesinos, a piece of rope, a small ladder, the excrement of people. I'm a leaf. They order me around, lead me by force. And you, my most abandoned daughter, my child, my lady, my queen, send me to a place where I do not belong. Okay, so the real difference between, the heavenly world and where he is finding himself located in that. So again, where are we going to find this divinity? And it's in nature. And I would behoove, most of us have probably found that divinity in nature as well, right? Where have you all, or where or when might have been a place where you've exceptionally felt the presence of God? What were you going to say?
Oh, nature.
Oh, in nature, yeah. In what specific places or parts or?
Forest.
Okay, forest.
Boundary waters.
Okay, BWCA.
Wildflowers.
And the wildflowers, yeah.
Just looking at the west side of the Mississippi.
Okay, yeah, especially now when the trees are changing and all of the beautiful colors, right?
West side of the Mississippi, they can't hear online if you don't speak into the mic.
Okay.
There's a question for you about the book that you're reading from.
Yes. It's called Guadalupe, Mother of the New Creation by Virgin Elisandro.
Aurora Borealis.
Ah, yes, definitely. Right. So Guadalupe comes and she, again, evokes this sense of the divinity in nature, as from the passage I read and from what Juan Diego is experiencing. And then, of course, as they go forth and they try to take stock of what, or understand what this image is that's before them, right? And then where else do we define divinity? So do we find it in that description that Juan Diego has of himself? No, absolutely not, right? But, slide 4, please, Andrea.
Okay.
Okay. So, but what we do find is that Nuestra Madre Maria calls him, right? And so I showed you where the beginning of his process was. This is where he is in his sense of how he fits into the world, right? But she gives him dignity, right? She allows him to see himself as God sees him. And that gives him the strength and the courage to go to that place where he doesn't belong. Not only that first time, he does, as Kathy says, the second time, he's like, my uncle's sick. I got to go visit him. And besides, Our Lady's never going to know that I'm gone. Well, just like Jonah, right? She like finds a way to find him in his path, in his wayward path. It's like, where are you going? I'm going to visit my uncle because he's sick. And, you know, I don't really want to go to that bishop anyway under his breath, right?
Yeah.
She's like, well, you know what? Your uncle's going to be cured. So this is one of the miracles in the story. And I want you to go talk to that bishop again. And of course, he's this reluctant saint, right? Who is on his way to go. But what happens? Again, the bishop refuses him, right? So she comes back to Our Lady, says, he's never going to believe me unless you send a sign. He says, I have to take a sign. Okay. So she says to him in response to what he said to his not being the right messenger. She says, listen, my most abandoned son. My most abandoned son, know well in your heart that there are not a few of my servants and messengers to whom I could give the mandate of taking my thought and my word so that my will may be accomplished. But it is absolutely necessary that you personally go and speak about this, and that precisely through your mediation and help, my wish and my desire be realized. I beg you. Here is the Queen of Heaven begging the lowest campesino who feels like excrement of the people, right? Beg you very much, my most abandoned son, and go with all my energy. I command that precisely tomorrow you go again to see the bishop. So that's a call he can't escape from, right? I like to think of that of the prophets of the Old Testament who are like, the voice is within me, the fire is within me. How can I not proclaim your word, right? And he goes, again, the bishop refuses him and says, bring me back a sign. So what does he bring? Roses, right? And remember, the bishops, I think in this time have come from Spain. So they're going to know Castilian roses over whatever variety might be growing, you know, in Mexico at the top of this hill. And so we have the depictions of the roses, and he's actually ordered not to show anyone the roses. But of course, the lackeys at the gate, you know, who are the gatekeepers, want to know what's in his tilma. And so he gives them a glimpse. But that's all. And they try to take him, you know, he's holding him like this, and they try to take him out of there. And he's holding it close. And then when he finally gets in front of the bishop, it's when he lets the tilma down, and that's when you see the image. And the one that Anne saw that's 500 years old is still hanging in the basilica today. And we'll, we'll see that one in a little bit. So, but before he gets to that point of the bishop, I wanted to just read what the bishop's attitude was, right? So these guys who couldn't grab the flowers, immediately they went to tell the bishop what they had seen. And the poor little Indian who had already come many times wanting to see him and had been waiting for a very long time. And upon hearing this, the Lord Bishop realized this meant the despicable man had proof to convince him. So we are still in the super despreciando, right? That just deprecating sense of believing. But the miracles prevail, right? And the bishop builds the temple to Guadalupe, and the rest of the history kind of reveals from there. But this is what Guadalupe hopes that it will be. She says, I very much want and ardently desire that a chapel be erected in this place. In it, I will show and give to all people all my love, my compassion, my help, and my protection. Because I'm your merciful mother and the mother of all the nations that live on this earth who would love me, who would speak with me, who would search for me, who would place their confidence in me. There I will hear their laments and remedy and cure all their miseries, misfortunes, and sorrows. And that's why we have book bags with Guadalupe's image on them in California, and things that dangle from the rear view mirror of people, and tattoos and jackets on people who may not even consider themselves believers or Christians, or her words live in the psyche. They live in the faith and the minds of the people. So. what-
Barbara McElwain has a question online. Go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you. And you are using the word the name Guadalupe and referring to the woman. And I'm wondering what Guadalupe means. Is there a special significance to this?
From my understanding, because there's a couple theories out there, is that the Nahuatl term for her was something like Xochitlupe or something, or Xochitculpe. But the Spaniards couldn't speak Nahuatl, but they were sounding out what they heard. And so Guadalupe was what the folks heard. And so that was the name that stuck to her. So that's what I've heard mostly and what resonates most with me. So, but we'd certainly do some more investigation on that as well.
Is the mountain special? Was the mountain itself? Was the mountain itself special for?
Yes. Tepeyac, the area of Tepeyac had been in the Aztecs' time a temple of fertility, and so temple of life for the Aztec people. So she appeared on this mount that they associated with life. What?
What I read was that site had been the site of the ancient shrine to the ancient mother goddess.
Exactly.
Many centuries, many millennia before it's on that same site.
Yes. Yes. So just tangentially, so we have the figure of Juan Diego. You can see his transformation, his courage, his perseverance. And just tangentially, I wanted to bracket that just because of the time of year we're in, that October 22nd was the anniversary of the death of Gustavo Gutierrez, or Father Gustavo Gutierrez, who is considered the father of liberation theology, which was born in the late 70s, or came into print in the late 70s, but had been practiced in Latin America for many years. And I had the opportunity to hear him speak in the late 90s. And he said in that talk, what I will always stick with me, he says, you may be the only gospel that someone ever reads, right? And so I look at Juan Diego, this poor campesino, and I think about all of us with our gifts that God has bestowed upon us, and whether we choose to put them in practice or not, or whether we choose to be prophetic or not, or however, but we all may be the only gospel that someone ever reads. So what I'd like you to talk about in your tables, when you think about Juan Diego's story, when or where have you recognized yourself as made in the image of God, as carrying that dignity that you are seeing yourself as God sees you, as that beloved daughter of God, right? What brought that recognition about? And did it make any difference? Does it make any difference in who you are today? So when or where have you recognized in yourself that you are a beloved child, a beloved daughter of God? And what brought that recognition about? So for him, it was being recognized by Our Lady, right? And given this job. And what difference does it make, and did it make for you in your life? So how about 10 minutes? About 10 minutes for this, because it's a deeper question.
Yes, I would simply say, Beautiful. Yeah, and how many good moments there are.
Okay, we'll come back together.
Anyways, really good moments.
Yeah. And what I'd ask of you is to just hold those sacred stories. And because I think that's what they really are, these stories of transformation and these stories of knowing that we're beloved. Because sometimes we get the privilege to receive those types of messages frequently, and other times it's really far and few between when it's really deep and hits our soul. And so what Guadalupe did is she really hit the soul of the people at that time, right? There were thousands and thousands and thousands of converts, especially amongst the indigenous folks, to Christianity based on her, not based on, on what they had experienced before, because she brought this feminine face of God, right? And as the conquest continued and the suppression, really, but also you were getting this new generation of people, the mestizos, the Spanish blood and the Indian blood mixing together out of these relationships, some forced, many forced, and others a part of people coming together, whether that was with, amongst the slave population, as it were, right, or amongst people. There were some good folks in there who were really caring about other folks, but most of it was through conquest and through violence. But so, and that really continues to this day, right? We've got our immigrants coming from many different countries into the United States. They're having children here who are growing up in our culture and do not know the ways of their parents, and their parents are struggling to figure it out here. And sometimes those children have a chance to go back to the home country and they're not accepted there. With the Latinos, you're not Mexican enough. And you come here, well, you're certainly not American enough in some places, right? So they inhabit and mestizos inhabit this place in between cultures and nations, right? Yeah. And Guadalupe gives people something to hang on to. Something good, something nurturing, something that is for them, right? And so she is both a painful reminder of the past, but a liberator and hope giver for the future, right? And each person has to negotiate that for themselves amongst in their life experience. And so Orozco goes on to talk about Juan Diego and this experience with Guadalupe, and talks about inspiring ecological conversion, right? Mm-hmm. And so in some ways, we can certainly see that with how it appeals to nature and this sense of relatedness. So in my experience, the Latino culture is very collective, right? If I go to the parish and I'm seeking volunteers, I usually don't go and say, well, please raise your hand if you want to volunteer, right? I'm going to go to each person and say, hey, we need something for X, Y, and Z. I think you might be the right person for this. Are you willing to get on board? And usually, yes, right? That sense of invitation, right? To be in relationship. A lot of times you get a yes just because they want to maintain the relationship, the harmony of the relationship, right? But then they don't show up, or they whatever. But it is very much more relational. And I would say that as the years and the centuries passed, and we think about the popular religiosity, that too draws us into a much more ecological mindset, especially in the sense of closeness to nature, relationality, right? And looking at kind of turning the traditional, quote unquote, patriarchal religion or sense of religion on its head. So I also think it gets played out in this sense of Christian discipleship moving towards greater stewardship, co-creation, and a true focus on beauty and a walking with versus a dominion over, right? Now, part of that is acknowledging a power differential, right? At least in this country. But the other part of that is just, I think, a real innate sense of wanting to be close to the earth, especially, the Maya talk about being people of the corn, right? And the special relationship they have with that. But many of our folks, even our undocumented immigrants here who are working in the fields and working in dairy farms, that sense of being close to the earth and working close to the earth, it is very hard work. But that sense of like, I am collaborating in this effort. I'm not just doing a job, right? So I would just ask you, and again, we can just pass the microphone around a little bit. What do you think from your life experience, from what you've read, from what you've heard up to this point? How is that playing out today? Do you get a sense that there's a greater movement towards an ecological conversion or a sense of looking at the world differently? Or do you feel like the author's making a stretch here?
No.
And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just an interesting how we're playing, what we think of it, how it plays out.
Well, because what's the group called at Crumble Village? The Justice Seekers have just begun the group on global warming. We read 3 articles and just watched 2 videos last night. And I knew this, I'd say, Mary Kay, at least 20 years ago from Wisdom Ways, having programs of the same sort, where we learned that there was a conscious, concerted effort by big oil to make sure that everyone was confused and unsure of whether this was damaging to the environment or not. Like all the scientists, 90% of them that long ago knew all of this. Big oil pushed billions of money into an effort online and in print and in pictures to just confuse people and just say, you've heard about this, but we're just unsure. We're studying this. We're doing all of that. And so it's still happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think the people that are hearing things and waking up, and even years and years ago, starting to not use plastic or not do this, or, go to the farmer's market or do whatever you can without all the packaging. But mostly, how many people we know they're just unaware. They're not really against it. They're just because they believe those ads that say, we just don't know.
Thank you. We'll take 2 more comments. We'll move on. Or continue, I should say.
My happiest years of my life were when I lived with my grandparents on a farm, and I learned how to care for the animals, and milk the cows and all those things. So I just loved that whole life. And then in 1976, our dear friend and I put on a conference on rural America, because I was very aware of what was happening around me. The bonanza farms, the degeneration of the soil, the climate, you could already see that. I was reading these books by a man named Brown, and he had excuse me, he had a plan, you know, he looked at the future. And he had this plan A, and then it didn't happen. There wasn't any progress being made. So then he had a book with the part B to save the world. But anyway, so we brought in experts like the director of agriculture, the director of the Catholic Rural America stuff, and all these people spoke, and it was 3-year program, 9 states. And it was a really nice success. But you know, when I was driving home the last day, when we had a big luncheon and stuff, you know, and I was driving home and I stopped the car and cried. Because even though it felt like a success, I just had this deep feeling that we will not progress until people pray and realize that the earth is sacred. We won't have any real progress. I mean, there are little parts, you know, here and there that are doing things, but it's impossible for a small farmer. You can't farm anymore, a small farmer. You can't even milk cows and do that. I mean, so it's sad that it's not, but we were not ever trained to think of the world, the earth, as sacred. It was just dirt.
Well, thank you for that comment. And I think to add to that too, we're not trained to think collectively, except for the big box corporations, right? Okay, one more.
Well, I like to think hopefully, and I believe that there are small groups of people. They ask for money, we get their calendars that come from groups. I know I have a very good friend, he's actually an atheist, but he is a gun owner. But he believes that there shouldn't be AK, whatever they are. And I mean, his farm has been put into conservancy. And I think there are groups around the country that are doing these very positive things. And we probably can all name a couple of them.
Right. And so that's a great segue into slide 5.
Is it possible to give folks on Zoom a chance to speak if they'd like to?
Sorry?
If you're on Zoom and you'd like to say something, please go ahead.
I had something I wanted to say. This is Christy. Because I was thinking about when I was growing up, and also about people when you're connected to the land in any way or form, you develop this relationship with all those parts of the land. And a lot of times, so I grew up near a farm in the country, and then I went to Milwaukee, and so it was kind of like that city cement, big buildings, and it's kind of like so different from the world, and how so many times, not many people, there's people that don't ever leave that, and so never get connected. And just traveling somewhere, I mean, you see such difference. I mean, it's a visual, like, natural world. It opens up your mind to and thoughts about the natural world. So without that connection, I mean, that's what I see about with the roses and the birds, because they worked the land. I mean, they had that connection, and it was so important. And just like the indigenous people in North America here, very connected to the land.
Yes, and that also works as a segue, because if you'll pull up slide 5 and for like 10 seconds, and then slide 6. So right on Lake Street, if you've driven down Lake Street lately, you will see that there are a plethora of murals, many more than we had before. And these are some of the ways that our Latino brothers and sisters are trying to make that connection for urban folks about the connection to the past and the connection to the land. So here's Mercado Central at the corner of 15th and Bloomington. And, you know, we have the indigenous women in indigenous dress and Guadalupe.
Oh, and make sure to speak in the microphone if you wouldn't mind.
So you have the women in Aztec traditional dress and an elder, that may be a child, that the pixels are not super clear. But then Guadalupe behind, and with someone who looks like he might just be, blue collar worker here, but then the Aztec warrior, and then other folks in clothing that's reflected hoy en dia. But again, trying to show the movement between the past and the present and going into the future. And if you come over here, again, some of the same. So, a military uniform and a Muslim woman and her children, the flag, the Mexican flag and her dress, the butterflies, the flowers, the Aztec dancer, who you maybe have seen, but then the African drummer. And so again, just trying to tell us that we are all interconnected and we have roots, deep roots in our past, and we are in the present, and where are we looking forward to going? So if you get a chance to just kind of go from like Lagoon down all the way down, or Lagoon, I guess, runs west, but Lake Street running east and head down all the way to the river. There are a plethora of murals that I think really try to invoke some of that mysticism and that poetry and that sense of dreaming versus our usual linear, logical, reasonable, dry sense of the divine, right? So, and I think in her discussion on the Trinity, Yvonne Guevara even says, the dominant thought, so white European theology, blames, harasses, and torments those who think differently, right? And then just in the sense that there's not some space for it. And I just wanted to share a personal story about that, like when going back to like what I had been trained, what I had learned, and getting to Mexico to study language and seeing all of this with Guadalupe, and I'm like, this is idolatry. We got to do better with our catechesis, and right? And it wasn't until, and I'm just so grateful that there was like something in my gut that said, no, don't jump to conclusions so quick. Stop judging, right? And just take this time to observe the people and see what's going on. I didn't speak Spanish at that time, so I couldn't like talk with people, But again, just really kind of the tenderness that a lot of people had with the image, and the again, just the connectedness, right? She was a bridge builder. And so I'm not proud of my judgments, but they were certainly there. And it took a little bit of a while to understand what place she had in their theologies. And if we go to the next couple of slides, here was one of Frida Kahlo también. So again, valuing your culture, valuing where you come from, valuing your heroes and heroines. On Lake Street, you can also find a lot of these individual portraits. And if you go to the next slide, so this is a typical rural Mexican cemetery, and maybe even urban, but very colorful. Again, that sense of we are celebrating our loved ones. Yes, we miss them, but we're celebrating our loved ones, and a sense of pride around keeping the cemeteries very clean. This is a Day of the Dead. So coming up on November 1st, we would go out, we had mass in the cemetery, and people bring the campesunche, all of would that be moms in English? Marigolds, thank you, yeah, the marigolds. And they have a strong sense of smell. So the idea is they have a strong scent. So the idea is, if any of you've seen Coco, that the strong scent brings the spirit back to the grave, and candles, light for the soul to come back to visit, and often plates of the person's favorite food, right? So just again, this whole sense of a thin veil between the other side, past and present. And I would really encourage you to watch Coco if you haven't, because it really is a wonderful description of this sense of the mystical, right? Another great film, if you've not seen it, it's older, but it's Como agua para chocolate, like water for chocolate. That whole sense of the hyperbole that you see throughout the film is just really reminiscent again of this whole sensory experience of the culture. And so again, this idea that we are very interconnected, past, present, and future.
It just so happens,
I think so.
it just so happens that out in the reception area here, the altar is set up for the Day of Dia de Muertos. And today in this room this afternoon, there was a lovely presentation by a woman who works at the St. Mary's Health Clinics and shaped it all around the context of her grandfather died last year. And just led us through this incredible, beautiful series of rituals that they've been doing and how he loved the earth. So many things that you just said were put in someone's life story today in this room.
Wow, wonderful. And then my next slide, just this is a typical Altar de los Muertos también, but you've got a live one over there. But I mean, but again, just some of the symbolism around, you know, the flowers, you know, this whole thing with the skeletons is not meant to be morbid at all, right? It's meant to show the sense of life, a sense of convening with the dead, right? But maybe a favorite doll, and of course the pictures of loved ones, but even again of your heroes and heroines, the tequila, the cerveza, the beer, favorite foods and spaces. So, and look at who's on top of the altar. Okay, so Guadalupe. So this is one way of expressing, again, this sense of closeness. And if we go to the next one, another way that really folks are attentive to the earth. So these, we call them arcos de flores, so flower arches, right? So this is the saint, a patron saint in someone's chapel, and it's one of the many Marys. So I'm not even sure which one in this particular picture. But you can see here, so this is, I was in Mexico in 2023 with a delegation from Minnesota. This is all made out of flowers. So it's all live flowers. And then, again, let's see, when we were there in September. So felicidades, madre mia, you know, congratulations to my mother. So I'm assuming this church had a patron saint who was a woman. And so that's why, yeah. And so, but you can see the intricate design. This is, when I lived in Mexico, I was in a town of Santiago Paso, St. James the Apostle. And that's a replica of, again, these great frames of all flowers. Lots of times they're real, especially on the feast days, but when it's not the feast days, then they could be fake. But again, the idea of color and, you know, that sensual sense of the divine present where we are. And so if we keep going forward, so this was in Ascension, I'm in Ascension in North Minneapolis. This was at Altar de Guadalupe last year. And if you go now, we've got the altar to the Day of the Dead. But this was Guadalupe last year. And they always do, it's the same retrato. So it's a copy of the one from Mexico City, but they always do different backgrounds. So we got purple that year. We all agreed we kind of liked earth tones better, but in any event. But our parishioners spend, you know, a weekend putting this up and creating the space for all the flowers. And there's a novena for 9 days, starting on December 3rd, leading up to her day, and then the big feast. And most of our parishes in the Twin Cities, there's about 22 of them now that have Latino congregations, will have something on Guadalupe. Either late at the night, we have mañanitas at 5:30 in the morning. And then we do our mass at 5 o'clock, and then at 6 o'clock, we have the big fiesta in the cafeteria. So all are welcome if you're interested in coming. Okay, so let's see, let's go a few more slides because I want another manifestation of all of this is seed art. So we go to the state fair to see kind of what's going on with the seed art. And in Mexico, they use the seeds to make the many religious arches. And I mean, look at all the intricacies of the border on either side. And this says, you know, Viva San Agustin. So their patron saint must be Saint Augustine. And, you know, that is one way of manifesting it. And if we go to the next slide, if you've ever been to Antigua, Guatemala for Semana Santa or Holy Week, they have these alfombras, which are carpets. This is all colored sawdust. Oh and so you can see the molds that these guys are using right here. Do they call molds? They call them, I don't know, when you do stencils, yeah. So they're putting in the colors, and then I'm guessing that this is probably in front of a panaderia, a bakery, because you've got your fresh bread here. And, they were on the corners. So again, the flowers, but these rich, vibrant colors, and they spend weeks putting these together. And they're destroyed in a matter of seconds when the folks come by carrying the large andens. But again, it's a great source of pride for the neighborhood. If you go next to the next slide.
It's like a mandala.
Yeah. And so the Holy Spirit here, and, this particular design, but then again, weaving your culture and heritage. So in Guatemala, the woman who is the weaver is also replicated in some of these. And I have if anybody's interested when we're done, but I have a book here. I lived in Guatemala from 2013 to 2014 and went to Holy Week. And there were people that would do sculptures out of fruit, and they'd be out there on the alfombras, and it's just impressionable. It's just really, really, really impressionable. So if you want to see some more, we got some pictures. Not sure. Is there one more? No. Okay. But we can even stop on. You can even stay on that picture. Okay. So really, like, what has this meant for me in my personal life? Okay. In terms of looking at what the Guadalupe story means for me. So I'm mestizo in the sense that I'm German, Polish, and Lebanese, right? I don't have any Latino in me, except my love for the Latino culture. I say I have a Latina soul, right? But for me, Lori and Carlos. Lori is a güera from Wisconsin, and Carlos is from Mexico. And so their two daughters, Eva and Carla. So we were gathered together on September 15th, which was Mexican Independence Day, right? So my life has become enriched by meeting other families from other places. And this is Lucero, and this is her 4 children. So I met Lucero. I was a family worker, a family outreach worker down where those Sibley apartments are along 5 going out to the airport. And it was mostly Latino and Russian immigrants. And Lucero came, I met her when she was, I think, 24. Her husband had come first, and she had arrived. So I knew her pre-kids and have been a friend of hers through all of these years. And Stephanie over here graduated from St. Kate's, and Melissa, all of these folks graduated from Cretin. And she is, I'm thinking she's at Winona right now. She's graduated from St. Ben's and is doing a master's in psychology. And this is the little granddaughter down there. Oh no, that's a little niece. And Manuel just started at St. Thomas Academy. So the mother who, got to study some, and then, but, in a sense, came here. They came like everybody else. We're just going to work a few years and then we're going back to Mexico, right? Well, then the children come, and then you root your life here. And, 25 years later, 30 years later, you're still here, right? And your kids
are lucky.
Her husband died of ALS when he was 50.
Oh.
So a lot of sorrow there as well. But just to say, my life has been, this is just 2 examples of two very good friends who are also my neighbors, where I live in St. Paul. And so just to say that sense of enrichment. And in my years of living in Chile, I was a missioner for 2.5 years. First year under the dictatorship, the second year in that transition to democracy. And I lived in Mexico for 2 years with the Archdiocese of Chicago, and then Guate for that 2013 to 2014. And so some of the lessons that I've learned are really about embracing simplicity, right? And leave no trace if you can. So recycle what you can, use everything that you can. I am so amazed at the resourcefulness of some of our Latino brothers and sisters. And I would bet that's for many immigrant communities, that you're making the most out of whatever you have, whether that's food, whether that's clothing, whether that's pieces of metal, just whatever. And then, that whole sense of interdependency and community. I own a house now, but I always said if I ever bought a house, it's going to have extra rooms so that people who need a place to stay can have a place to stay if they need it. We've hosted Amity students, the students who come to teach. I live just a few blocks away from Adams Spanish Immersion. And so just to really have this enriching experience of people from other countries. And of course, you know, grounded in service and spirituality and social justice. So all of this has come out of my moving into this space of displacement in Latin America and living and walking with the people, and then coming back here and trying to figure out how to find a place. That ruined for life thing that fits out, right? But what are some of the other things? So in our parish of Ascension, over the years, you know, when I got there in 2009, my first Holy Week there was in 2009, and we had 2 Easter vigils. We had one in Spanish and we had one in English, right? I'm like, wow. No, we're not doing this again. So really, but I just left there last August after 16 years of being there, and it took us that whole time to walk with one another and to get to know one another and to appreciate the gifts that each other bring, right? And so now if you go like on the Feast of San Pasquale on May 18th, they fill the church with flowers, right? Because his colors are red and white. And so we have that a decoration, those adornos, right? On the Feast of the Body and Blood of Christ, the Eucharistic Adoration Group, again, they've got their flowers and their images and all of that kind of thing, but we see it now as part of our fabric versus like, you know, and there was a lot like, what's going on here, you know? But we're trying to educate each other as to what we're doing. And the Feast of Santa Cecilia, November 23rd, 22nd, we would have sometimes Mexican bandas come on the Sunday closest because people really wanted to have this. So they would pay to have the group come in and be a part of sometimes they're part of a liturgy, sometimes they just did something at the end. It just depended what year. But again, to just say, you know, the richness, if we go to slides 15 and 16, back into that, just so a couple of images here. Next, okay, so these are some of the women, the matriarcas from Ascension, and this is actually for the Feast of Guadalupe. Everybody brings out their traditional garb, and right behind them is the and you can see right here, here's Guadalupe, and the floor. So they were 4 of them, which were carrying that, and so we have a bilingual mass at the Basilica on the closest Sunday to Guadalupe, and take her over there and have bring tamales and pan dulce, and, you know, to create a cultural experience over there. And then again, on the actual day at Ascension. And it's hard to see behind here, but I don't know if any of you have been to Salvador or Guatemala at Christmas time, but, you know, we put up our little manger scene. I put it on my table and it's contained right there, you know? And this is like half of our cafeteria space. Is sometimes with the manger scene. Now this one is a little bit more contained, right? But you can see there's like 6 artificial Christmas trees. There's adornos up here. You've got a little ramp. Jesus and Mary and Joseph are back here, and you've got all the animals, and you've got like a whole day's worth of work to set that up, right? Yeah. But for our folks who come, when we all gather for Christmas Eve dinner that we have after our 6:30 Christmas Eve Mass, like that's their Christmas for a lot of people. A lot of people don't have other relatives here where we're going to go and have dinner, or so we create a dinner, and so this adds to our festive our festive space, right? So there's been a lot of ways that our community has been very enriched by the popular religiosity again. That you know, has its roots in that closeness to the earth and to the other. And then the next slide, just wanted to say this is the graduation of the lay leadership program in Spanish from St. Thomas. That it is kind of the peak of our formation trajectory over the years as we had 3 graduates from Ascension. And this is the next cohort who was serving folks. But you may know Deb Organ and Marta Pereira and myself. We're all instructors in the program. So again, on preparing people for pastoral ministry, as well as, you know, creating these space in our parishes. And these are the folks who are on staff. You know, some of the graduates, we've had 120 graduates in the past 10 years, pretty much. So again, just that real sense of richness in our ministry world too. And in the next slide, so I started at St. Kate's in June and took 3 young women with Katie there, 3 young women to the El Futuro conference in Chicago. And so you can see, again, it was a celebration of Latino young adults from around the country, most of them from smaller Catholic schools. But it was a chance for them to see people with higher education degrees giving talks, you know, and envisioning themselves being there and integrating, you know, into higher education. And so, and actually they came back with and said, you know, our Latino Student Association does a lot of cultural stuff, but what about Latino ministry? So they want to do so for this coming Saturday. If you're interested at Our Lady of Victory Chapel, we're having Mass in Spanish at 4 o'clock. And then they've organized their Dia de los Muertos dinner and baile. So it's only $5 if you're not a St. Kate student. But if you just want to get a feel for what they're trying to do and create over there, you know, you can come just from a perspective of curiosity and just engaging, right? And then I know we're running short on time, but this last piece is really important. The next slide. So this is the delegation who went to the World Jubilee for Migrants from the United States on October 4th and 5th. And I would just like to invite, I need 3 readers, basically. If I got 1, 2, and then the third one is on the back. So if someone would like to do the first one and then just pass, I'm going to read the opening paragraph. And then, so how does this play out today? This happened on October 7th, okay? So this is from Ellie Roman. She is the president of the National Catholic Council on Hispanic Ministry. She wrote an article for America that just came out this week. It says, for months, the board and members of the National Catholic Council for Hispanic Ministry, where I serve as president, had prayed for the opportunity to see the Holy Father. But every request was met with a gentle no. Still, we trusted God's timing. On Sunday, just after the Jubilee Mass for Migrants, my phone rang. It was the Vatican security. Be at the Bronze Door at the Apostolic Palace at 5 p.m. on Tuesday for a private audience with the Pope. 2 days later, we found ourselves walking through the gates of the Vatican, hearts racing, prayers trembling on our lips. We were ushered into the courtyard of the Apostolic Palace, where popes receive heads of state. And there we met Pope Leo XIV. The Holy Father spoke to us in Spanish, the language of our faith, our mothers, our songs, and our tears. And here is what he said.
You have in your hands a very great task to accompany those who need a sign that God never abandons anyone. Not the smallest, not the poorest, not the foreigner, not anyone. In the service you offer in ministry, you are clearly that witness that is so important, perhaps especially in the United States, but in the entire world, a world that is suffering from war, violence, hate. And as we, followers of Jesus, as disciples, want to live the gospel. Thank you for all that you are doing, and may God bless you and strengthen you. And may your hearts always be filled with faith and hope so you can share with others.
And the article continues. His word pierced the soul of a people who have too often been told they do not belong, including mine as a Puerto Rican living in Chicago and serving the Latino communities.
Pope Leo prayed to our Father in Hail Mary in Spanish with us. At a time when speaking our language in the United States can provoke suspicion or hatred, this moment was uplifting and filled with hope. The successor of Peter was affirming our identity, our culture, our language, and our dignity before the world.
When Pope Leo shook our hands one by one, he looked into our faces, brown, weary, hopeful, overcome with tears of joy and hope. We saw the church that walks with the poor, the church that refuses to be silent. His kind gesture lifted the United States Latino community when we needed it most.
We departed from the Vatican Apostolic Palace transformed.
We came as pilgrims, burdened by the suffering of our people. We left as witnesses of grace. In a world that often rejects the stranger, the church opened its heart. And in that sacred encounter, Pope Leo XIV reminded us that faith transcends fear, that love crosses every border, and that indeed, God never abandons anyone.
So, alive today, the message of Guadalupe. And in this last slide, just wanted to say, so I had the blessed opportunity to be at the shrine in 2023. So this is a great sculpture that's out in the back. The shrine is kind of over here. And this is what the image, if you haven't seen it, this is the image in the basilica. So again, it's on a corn fiber tilma, so something that should have rotted ages ago. And there's a conveyor belt that goes underneath it. So people can, so you just get on the conveyor belt and go round and round and round and round if you want, right? But people go through, and everybody's taking pictures and stuff like that. So it's not a very, what do you want to say?
Austere.
No, like sacred or reverential going. No, it's more like a circus, but in any event, it is really powerful. And so I just wanted to close by saying that, I listened to Elizabeth Johnson's keynote for the 375th anniversary of the CSJs. And, she really highlighted that relationship between the giver and the gift. And the quote of Laudato Si is saying, we humans are not disconnected from the rest of creatures, but joined together in one splendid universal communion. And I think Guadalupe really represents that, a bridge builder person who represents that universal communion, people coming at her from all different ways. And Arturo Banuelos, who is a longtime Latino leader in El Paso, Texas, he created an institute called Tepeyac Institute for Lay Formation and Leadership. And he says, "Tu eres mi otro yo," which means you are my other me. And that sense of that we are all interconnected in that way. And to just close, Elizondo goes on to say, when you think about when Guevara talks about kind of looking at the Trinity in new ways to really broaden our understanding of theology, says, what about, or Elizondo says, what about thinking about the Trinity as the mother who sends her Indian child to the bishop or the Christian father to build a home for everyone? So what would it look like if our image of Trinity included that, right, in equal portions? And so I would just say that, personally, Juan Diego will continue to teach me about humility and patience and perseverance and courage with the institutional church. And Nuestra Madre will continue to be venerated and beseeched for her intercession and her protection and her guidance. And so I just pray that, I pray in thanksgiving really for the interactions and for what the Latin Church, the Church of Latin America has given to me. And my prayer for you all is that your lives would be as rich, which I'm sure they are. And so we may continue to journey together. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful.
And making a swan.